Saswati Bora from the Nature Conservancy, welcome to the forum. You're the Global Director for Regenerative Food Systems, and you've been on one of the panels today talking on a wide question, which is where do we go from here? Saswati, I listened to a little bit and I heard you say that here we are in Brussels today, that you've been talking or listening to EU policymakers in meetings yesterday that left you feeling a little bit depressed, I think was the word that you used. Can I start there and ask you why?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a very interesting times in EU politics, and I think there is a lot of progress that was made on the Green New Deal, and I think from what I see and understand, there's been a little bit of a standstill, and that's because of the elections coming up. So I think there was a little certain degree of frustration about why are we waiting this issue of climate and biodiversity loss is so urgent. So why are we, are we going back on some of the things we decided? But having said that, I came out of today's conference feeling very optimistic. As someone who has worked on agriculture and food systems for 2 decades now, and now working at a conservation organization, and I feel very positive because everyone said the same thing. The goals of agriculture production, farming community, and the conservation mission that of environmentalists is the same. We want to make sure we produce food, but we produce food in an environmentally sustainable manner, and we are resilient to climate and biodiversity collapse. And I think that makes me very happy that this is, very often it's spoken as if it's a trade-off, and it is not a trade-off. It's a win-win, and that made me very, very happy about it. I think the other thing that I heard was everyone seems to agree on the direction of travel, but there has been a lot of discussion about the how. How do we get there? And that's actually a very good discussion to have. And at Nature Conservancy, and we have a regenerative food systems program, and while working with producers and ranchers, we have decided to focus on a sort of a landscape approach. Or we call these foodscapes, where food and agriculture system is a part of a larger landscape approach, because we feel that by taking that approach, you are all building on farmers' income, but you're also looking at the impact of farming at a watershed at a landscape level, because of course the work you do in a supply chain, a farm, has impact in a broader landscape. So I think this is one of the ways that we are thinking of the how part, about how environmental outcomes and food production can sort of work in a synergistic manner.
And not just the how, but the making it happen. I know you said that after COP28 in Dubai at the end of last year, that there were 150 signatures on the Global Food Declaration. It's a shame it's taken so long, but at least you feel, I'm glad there is some hope, because you feel that there is progress being made, and you can see a way through to practical action.
It took a long time to get food on the agenda, but at Nature Conservancy, we work with private sector, we work with scientists, we work with financial institutions, and I can say that everyone is looking at regenerative agriculture. Everyone understands that if we have to solve for climate and biodiversity, you have to solve for food systems. And this landmark declaration was important because it put food on the agenda for the first time, and that's important. That's a signal. And now we have to see how it translates into the NDC, the National Determined Contributions of countries, how it shows up in the country plans, and it also shows up in the work that we and other organizations are doing on the ground.
And you also spoke to the forum about the actions of banks and more particularly governments, looking at taking on risk, looking at how we finance, looking at how we have the levers and powers to make that happen, and that's so important too in this debate. I mean,
this transition is completely needed, the regenerative transition, but it needs time, it needs resources, it needs knowledge. So this is a really early days of the movement, but this movement has to include everyone. And I think the businesses are doing it. Businesses have made commitments on regenerative agriculture. They're trying to work with us and other actors to see how they can make it happen. Now, financing is a big deal. And there is a huge potential to unlock public financing, because we know a lot of public subsidies and incentives are already directed to food production, but they may not be being directed in an environmentally sustainable manner. So there is a way of repurposing this, not take it away, but to repurpose the subsidies. But that's not going to be enough. As we heard today, the budgets of countries are being squeezed right now. And so we need the private financing also to step up. We need the financial institutions to take more risk, to work with intermediaries. We need the private sector supply chain players to also really look at how they can direct financing to the farmers. I mean, farmers have to be part of the solution. A lot of times, companies and others are making commitments, but forgetting to give the incentives to farmers who will be key to meeting that goal. So I think that's what is needed.
Thank you so much for talking to us today and for your participation in the forum.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Pleasure.